Coming up on Lawmakers, the Senate puts the brakes on a red light camera bill. Legislation dealing with alcohol sales at Gwinnett County's new stadium is targeted as a vehicle for a repeal of prohibition on Sunday sales. And it's the end of the shortest legislative week thus far in 08. We'll check in with Tom Crawford of CapitalImpact.com. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, and Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, the House passes legislation late last night targeting Grady Memorial Hospital.
And the Senate votes to make dogfighting a felony. But first, our top story tonight, red light cameras generate controversy in the Senate. Well, after much debate, the state Senate decides to table a measure that calls for state oversight of red light cameras. Lawmakers Sandra Parrish joins us live with the details. Sandra.
David, House Bill 77 has seen many forms since it was first introduced in the House last year, initially calling for the repeal of red light cameras. As it came to the Senate floor today, the measure now requires local governments to get a permit from the state DOT after first documenting a need for such a monitoring device.
If we don't pass a red light camera bill in this session, we're going to continue right down the same road that we're on. And there is going to be more red light cameras installed with no oversight in the state if this bill is not passed.
More than 20 cities now operate red light cameras in Georgia, and it depends who you ask whether they're there for safety or as a revenue source. Senator Jack Murphy, who carried today's bill, says requiring DOT oversight is the best solution to both arguments.
It requires a governing authority, like I said, to obtain a permit from the Georgia DOT to install a red light camera. And it has to require a genuine safety need. They have to submit to the DOT reasons why they need this red light camera there, and they have to show that the intersection has had so many accidents at the time of the need, and it's not just little fender benders, it's actually serious life-threatening accidents.
But not everyone is happy with the change.
Accidents are down in intersections that have cameras, and the resulting flow of money is also down because the number of accidents are down, and the number of people running red lights goes down once they learn that there are cameras in the intersection. So the next question comes, the cameras fall under public safety. The cameras are there for public safety. Why are we going to give DOT authority over a public safety item?
If I had my druthers, this bill would be eliminate red light cameras. Second version is take the revenue and put it in the trauma network so the folks that are hurt in my district will have a hospital to go to.
A host of amendments abruptly put a halt to the measure.
This is the first time this session that we have had Mickey Mouse type amendments, and I'm not real happy about it.
I moved to table Senate House Bill 77. We want to get it right before we pass it out.
We didn't expect all these amendments to be piled on, and we just need it. We was going to get into too much discussion here, you know, on all the amendments, and there wasn't any use in us doing that. Let's just table it, fix it, and bring it back.
Now, another provision of the bill actually requires local governments currently operating red light cameras to also get permits on existing devices by January 1st, 2010. No word when the bill will be brought back to the floor, but Senate leaders say they do expect an agreement will be reached. Reporting live, I'm Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Sandra. In the 12th hour of legislative business, the House last night voted to allow the state to take control of Grady Memorial Hospital if the board does not expedite its transition to nonprofit status. Members of the Fulton and DeKalb delegations opposed the measure, along with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, but bill sponsor Representative Sharon Cooper called House Bill 1299 a safety net. At stake, according to Representative Cooper, a top-notch training ground for medical students and residents, specialized nurses who are seeking jobs at other hospitals, and $200 million in private sector funding for the beleaguered hospital. But Atlanta Representative Bob Holmes wanted to see the guarantee that the money is forthcoming.
They have talked with a large philanthropic group, and they have said that they will help, but they are getting nervous now. This is a year's process, 10 months since they asked the Metro Chamber for help, and everybody's getting a little nervous, and this is just a safety net to make sure that the legislature has a bill moving if they need to give this board just a little extra push it needs to go ahead and do what they need to do to sign the lease and appoint the members of the new nonprofit board.
Would you please specify how your safety net protects the citizens of my district that are funding $40 to $80 million of this funding?
Well, Representative Oliver, apparently that is not enough to keep, and it doesn't meet what citizens from your district and your county actually, there are more patients that go, and the cost is more to Grady than what your county pays.
HB 1299 creates a 17-member Grady board appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, House Speaker, and the Fulton and DeKalb County Commissions. This drew criticism from the leader of the Legislative Black Caucus.
Home rule is good as long as it's not your home rule is being infringed upon. I'd hate to see Liberty Regional, a Memorial, a hospital in Rome, a Putney, come under state control, and that's where we had it.
HB 1299 passed 106 to 61. An effort to compel the House to reconsider its action failed, and the measure moves to the Senate. Representative Cooper says she will withdraw the legislation if the Grady Board reorganizes before the end of the session.
Well, after a 4-year fight, anti-dogfighting legislation finally passes both chambers. Senator Chip Rogers took the well today to explain House Bill 301.
We have sadly become a haven for dogfighting. Our laws, if not the worst, are one of the worst in this nation. You are about to correct that problem yet again today. And I believe that finally this is the last time I will have to bring this issue before you.
After adjournment, Senator Rogers held a press conference to discuss the legislation and why he believes Georgia was due for this bill.
Right now, Georgia is ranked, I believe, 49th. And they said if this bill passed, it would move us all the way up to number 3. So instead of being one of the very worst states in America, we will now be one of the very best. And that goes to what I referenced earlier. It is a well-known fact if you talk to dog fighters, people involved in dog fighting around the country, that Georgia is a place to go because you're not really going to have to worry about prosecution. That fact will change.
I asked Senator Rogers about the influence the Michael Vick case may have had on this bill.
It made a big difference in the awareness that people have that dog fighting is around them, that anybody can be involved in dog fighting. Your neighbor can be involved in dog fighting, and I think that awareness has made a big difference. I spoke to some people that have set up a dog fighting hotline, and they said in the last 2 weeks they've had 70 calls.
Rogers also discussed penalties up to jail time for spectators of dog fighting.
The problem that law enforcement has is ferreting out who's the owner, who's the spectator, who's involved. In reality, if you're attending a dog fight, you are the reason the dog fight is occurring, because they're probably not going to occur unless people are there to watch it, people are there to gamble on it, people are there essentially to participate in it. So we need to make sure we go after people that are spectators. Most every state around us has a spectator felony provision. This is as close to a felony as you can get, but at the end of the day, it is jail time.
Now, Senator Rogers adds that Representative Reese, who sponsors HB 301, is happy with the Senate changes in the bill and that the House should vote to agree. Rogers also hinted legislation for next year which addresses the handling of dogs rescued from these illegal operations. Again, HB 301 passed 54-0 and now goes back to the House.
Earlier today, an amendment that would allow Sunday sales of alcohol in grocery and package stores was tacked onto a bill originally limited to Sunday sales in county-owned stadiums. The amended measure received a unanimous do pass by the House Regulated Industries Committee against the wishes of the bill's sponsor. Lawmakers Bridget Snapp is live with more. Bridget.
In Wandy, Senator Renee Unterman's original bill, SB 454, was aimed at allowing the future Gwinnett Stadium to sell beer on Sundays. She claimed she was blindsided by Chairman Roger Williams' amendment and resents the use of her bill as a vehicle to repeal the prohibition of Sunday sales.
What this law does, this bill proposes, is to change it so that if you're in a city, you can also be in a county and serve beer and wine at a stadium.
This was the intent of Senator Unterman's bill before Chairman Williams proposed his amendment.
There are definite hours for this to be allowed. Is from 12:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. There's no requirement in this bill that cities or counties are required to call for a referendum. If they don't want to bring this to the ballot, they certainly are not forced to do so.
Senator Unterman reacted strongly to the amendment.
Now, I know down here my opinion doesn't matter a whole lot, but since I did write the bill, I wrote the bill solely because I represent my Senate District 45. The Gwinnett County Commissioners came to me and asked me to do this for them. I agreed to do it. At no time did I ever envision or want this to be a vehicle for Sunday sales of packaged liquor.
Representatives of the grocery industry support the amendment to the bill.
And we're here to support Chairman Williams' substitute language. And in doing so, we are here asking you to support language that our customers have been asking us for many, many years. It does not make sense to them that under current law, our customers, your constituents, in many locations can go to a bar or a restaurant on Sunday, purchase alcoholic beverages, get in the car, and drive home, but yet they can't go to our grocery store, buy a bottle of wine, and come back to their home to enjoy it for dinner.
However, several representatives of the Baptist community spoke out against the bill.
If we sell more alcohol, more people are going to die. And I just want to tell you, I don't desire to ever again be called to the emergency room or the morgue or the police station and join a family from my church or join a family from your district or some other district in this state and have to be with them when they find out the terrible news of what alcohol has done to them.
In addition to SB 454, the committee also passed Senator Don Balfour's SB 385, which allows limousine companies to sell alcohol. Both bills now head to House rules. Reporting live, I'm Bridget Snapp for Lawmakers.
All right, thank you very much, Bridget. Well, House and Senate budget negotiators will take the next few days while the legislature is out of session to work on the mid-year budget. House Majority Leader Jerry Keene told reporters today they're having to deal with the governor's lowered revenue estimates.
Everything in the 08 is back on the table. We're simply not going to go in with the differences between the House and the Senate as passed and sort of try to balance out with the revenue reduction estimate, with the revenue estimate reduction by the governor. We're simply not going to work off those differences. The House today is saying everything's back on the table. So we're going to have to take a second look at items and of course, balance the budget based on the $65 million reduction. As far as the 09, we are starting from scratch. It's one of the reasons we adjusted the calendar to give our budget teams and the Senate budget teams time to work. It now puts us on a pretty compressed timeline to go through, get the budgets passed in both chambers, and get a conference committee report hammered out by that April 4th or 5th weekend. Obviously, we're going to blow right through the April 1st target.
In other news, a bill giving Georgia pharmaceutical companies preference to serve Medicaid, Peach Care, and state employee health plan patients passed the House last night, 1 week after a similar measure was defeated.
I think we fixed it properly now. If you'll look at page 2 of the bill, line 22, basically what it allows is the Department of Community Health to negotiate prices for drugs and healthcare products. Down on line 26, it also excludes certain drugs, Schedule 2, 4s, and 5s of controlled substances. So, and that's simply all it does. It's fixed. I worked on it last Friday and this past Monday, and it's good to go.
House Bill 180 passed 127 to 35. It now moves to the Senate.
The Senate also passed legislation today that sets the dates for special elections. Senate Majority Leader Tommy Williams explains House Bill 296.
Currently, the law allows for special elections on questions put to the voters too frequently. Oftentimes, voters, there might be 5% of the population that actually determines how much folks are taxed. So this bill says in odd number of years, you can have elections on the third Tuesday in March or the Tuesday after the first Monday in November, which people know that they're going to have an election in November. And on even number of years, you can, if there's a presidential preference primary, you can have it then, or the general primary, or the general election. And that's the opportunities that communities will have for having a special election, putting a vote to the question regarding revenue.
The Senate also voted to pass HB 1088, which aims to bring more tourists to agricultural attractions across the state. America's Senator George Hooks explains.
It brings together Georgia's two most important and largest industries, agriculture and tourism. It allows the business owner who may be own a winery, a vineyard, Christmas tree farms, you pick vegetables or fruits, to come together and to buy a little fee they would pay to the Department of Agriculture. They will set up a criteria, as been done in other states, and then they can allow the DOT to set up these signs all along the highway to direct these people to the proper tourist attraction. It's a good economic tool. It's worked well in other states, and like I say, it brings together both agriculture and economic development for the benefit of all Georgians.
The Senate passed a tourism bill unanimously. HB 1088 had no Senate changes, so it now goes to Governor Perdue. House Bill 296, the special elections bill, now goes back to the House along with HB 291, a bill that also passed today, which creates a Georgia Arts Alliance.
Well, with the House adjourning after 10:30 last night, today's calendar was significantly lighter. Besides local legislation, only two bills passed, beginning with Senate Bill 345, creating the Interstate Commission on Military-Dependent Children.
You have the situation where if your parents are serving in Iraq or somewhere else like that, maybe you have a high school senior, and that high school senior may not have taken one of the graduation requirements with respect to something that they may have to, that the Georgia Department of Education may have a regulation or something like that that said you had to have Georgia history. And under the regulations, you wouldn't be able to allow that child, maybe a senior, to graduate. And obviously, we would want that child to have the ability to graduate from a Georgia school. This is the kind of things this is set up to take care of.
Senate Bill 345 passed without opposition. Changes made by the House send the bill back to the Senate. There was final passage today of SB 399, a renewal of the $1 fee charged for tires and used to fund landfill management.
Maybe the best way to look at this would be what would happen to Georgia without the Solid Waste Trust Fund. First of all, in a very short period of time, we would have abandoned tires all over the state. There would be no enforcement, there would be no oversight, there would be no education. We would have resurgence of the scrap tire dumps. We would have no enforcement. We would have the tendency for methane gas explosions and fires.
SB 399 passed 137 to 26. The renewal now requires the governor's signature.
Well, it was a short but eventful legislative week, so it's time to check in with Tom Crawford of CapitalImpact.com. I began by asking Tom about the Speaker's latest tax reform legislation, which passed the House yesterday.
We thought the bill was dead last week when the House failed to approve it, and the Speaker indicated he wasn't going to bring it up again, but he evidently thought the issue through over the weekend. He made some more changes in the bill to make it a little more palatable to both Democrats and local government officials. It still includes the central feature, which is the elimination of the auto license tag tax. It came up again yesterday. This time it passed, I believe, 166 to 5. Overwhelming approval from both Republicans and Democrats. So the Speaker is a happy camper, and everybody has a good issue they can campaign on when they run for re-election this fall.
There was some tax reform legislation actually brought to the Senate floor by a Democrat. Kasim Reed had one that he proposed.
That's correct. He brought up a bill that I believe offers a much higher homestead exemption for teachers and military personnel, I believe, if they live within the county that offers that particular exemption. So that could be a good deal for the state's teachers especially. It still has to go by the House and get approval there. But it was one of those rare instances when a Democratic bill was able to make it out of one of the chambers.
Well, on crossover day again yesterday, one of the governor's initiatives actually made it through, and that has to do with school accreditation.
Yes, it was a Senate bill that the Senate adopted. It provides that if a school system loses its accreditation, like Clayton County, for example, then the members of the school board can be removed and the residents of that county or city can elect a new school board in its place. That's a good thing to have in case things do go wrong with the Clayton County system.
The budget was already a point of contention between the House and Senate, and now that we've seen some February revenue estimates, that has grown even more.
The revenue collections for February were a little flat. There have been several soft months where the numbers that they were expecting didn't come in. So Governor Sonny Perdue earlier this week said he was lowering the official revenue estimate both for the rest of this fiscal year and for the fiscal year that begins on July 1. That basically means lawmakers have to go back to the drawing boards and try to get both the current budget and the upcoming budget in line with the governor's revenue estimates. That is going to take some time. I think some legislators are a little irritated about that as well, but they don't have much choice. They are going to have to make those changes, and it's probably going to stretch out the session a little longer than we had originally anticipated.
It was a long day in both the House and Senate yesterday. It was the last day for these bills to get through their chamber of origin. What are some key bills that didn't make it through?
Well, there were a couple of bills having to do with English-only amendments that would force local governments to use only English in dealing with citizens, printing out official documents. The bills are obviously aimed at the immigrant communities living in Georgia. Both of them failed. There was one of them they made a last attempt to salvage yesterday. It didn't make it through, so I think they're pretty much dead for this session. A couple of pieces of legislation that would have made abortion illegal in Georgia under almost any circumstances. The so-called Human Life Amendment was killed in committee. They did not get it out in time for the crossover day vote yesterday, so that is also dead. The governor's attempt to have a tax break, an income tax break for affluent senior citizens, that also got stuck in the Senate and didn't come up for a vote. So those are some things that didn't make it this year.
Now that we've gotten through crossover day, what are some of the bills we expect to see in the next couple days?
One thing we could see is a revival of the Sunday package sales legislation. In fact, later today, Wednesday, House committee is going to take up a bill that would legalize Sunday beer sales at the new Gwinnett County baseball stadium. My understanding is they may add an amendment in there to also allow for Sunday package sales. So that's an issue that could come popping out the last 7 or 8 days of the session and really make things lively.
All right. Well, Tom Crawford, national editor of CapitolImpact.com. Tom, I want to thank you again for joining us.
Great to be here.
And before we go on, we'd like to recommend a website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.ga.gov. That website is a great research tool that we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
Legislation targeting illegal immigrants involved in traffic accidents was discussed in the Senate committee today. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini has that story.
House Bill 978 permits law enforcement officers to confiscate the vehicle of an illegal immigrant involved in a traffic collision. The legislation does not mention the consequences for the immigrant or any passengers in the vehicle.
Any motor vehicle that is registered in this state that comes under these two categories, number one, that's involved in a violation of the traffic laws of this state or involved in an accident in this state, while being operated by a person who's not legally in this country, then that property can be considered as subject to the drug forfeiture and seizure laws.
But some legislators and lobbyists express concerns about due process conflicts and excessive fines.
HB 978 is a gross overreaction to our failed federal immigration policy. We have several concerns with this. First, due process. How do I, as a U.S. citizen, prove that I am a U.S. citizen while driving in the state of Georgia? I don't carry my passport. I carry my driver's license. That doesn't necessarily prove that I'm here in this country legally. The second concern that we have is we're starting a precedent for taking of private property for a federal violation of civil immigration law.
House Bill 978 was assigned to a subcommittee for further review and won't be voted on until next week. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Minu Hosseini.
Senate Bill 1 prohibiting registered sex offenders from photographing minors passed out of committee today. Senator Eric Johnson, who sponsors the bill, addressed the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee.
SB 1 prevents a sexual predator from intentionally taking a picture of a minor without the parent's consent. That's all it does. It came from a constituent in Richmond Hill, Georgia, in Bryan County that I represent, where a girl was working at a coffee shop, a young girl, and a man came in and took pictures of her chest and then started showing it to his friends and talking suggestively, made her very uncomfortable, as you can imagine.
Senate Bill 1 now heads to House Rules. The committee also passed Senate Bill 350, which would punish people for driving without being licensed. Senator John Wiles elaborates.
I bring to you Senate Bill 350, which is a bill that simply makes it an offense to drive without ever having been issued a driver's license, the same as driving on a suspended license. I want to say that again. Without ever having been issued a license, it makes the penalty the same as driving on a suspended license, and it makes it a felony on the fourth offense to drive without ever having been issued a driver's license or having had a suspended license.
Senate Bill 350 got a unanimous do-pass recommendation and now heads to House Rules.
Today, the Senate Education and Youth Committee passed House Bill 881, a measure to create a charter school commission in Georgia. Legislators heard testimony from those both for and against the bill.
Without 881, parents who are dissatisfied with the large schools that their students are assigned to, in schools where they feel left out, left behind, and insufficiently challenged, they must be forced to remain in schools that are ill-fitted for their children. Please vote yes for House Bill 881. And if for no other reason, do it because it's the right thing to do for Georgia, the right thing to do for change, and the right thing to do for our children.
As of today, this morning, we were approved as a state charter school. But the problem is the funds. The money is not coming with the children. And this is the reason why financially we're asking that House Bill 881 support is going on, because we work very hard in order to have an option for our community and our parents, but yet we fall short because of funding.
Our major concern with this bill is the funding section of it. It's a very complex, convoluted method of funding the commission charter schools. The Constitution says a local board cannot levy taxes for students in special schools without a referendum being held. There is no referendum being held here. The state is simply deducting the funds.
We, the Newton County Board of Education, ask you today not to vote against innovation, but to vote against adding another layer of government and circumventing the local board's input in this decision process. Thank you.
House Bill 881 received a do-pass recommendation by a vote of 5-3. The bill now goes to the Senate Rules Committee.
Lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow, Friday, or Monday because the Georgia General Assembly will be in recess. Lawmakers returns Tuesday, March 18th at 7 p.m. with all the latest Capitol news. If you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, be sure to tune in tomorrow when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and evenings at 6 p.m. on Georgia Gazette. Now, stay tuned for Georgia Traveler. Tonight's episode features scenic mountain highways. Georgia Travelers coming up next here on GPB.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 31st legislative day of 2008. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Wandi Lawson. Have a great St. Patrick's Day weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.